Good afternoon. My name is Youngjun Son. I'm James J. Solberg, head of Edwardson School of Industrial Engineering. It's my absolute pleasure to introduce our rising star professor, Elias Siegel, rising star associate professor Brandon Pitts. So Brandon, when I joined actually Purdue a few years ago, during my interview, Brandon gave a very good introduction of myself. Today is my turn, okay? So Brandon joined us in 2017, and then bachelor's in Louisiana State University and master's and PhD at the University of Michigan. And he's working on human factors and ergonomics. And as you know, the Purdue IE is right, the very highly ranked. Human factors is the best program in the country and world. Okay, and then Brandon is actually the very strong contributor to the visibility of our human factors program. And as you know, because of the advancement of this AI and automation, the importance of the human factors will continue to be important in the future as time goes on. Okay, so in particular, Brandon works on. I mean, we will hear a lot about what Brandon does, but he work on this automation and human interface interaction, and also the design of this emerging, the intelligence systems across, broad ranges of the users, like young people, old people, and then people with, the disabilities, and so on. Okay. So I'm not sure Brandon will mention about a lot of the awards that you have received. So I'm going to mention actually a few of them. And his NSF Career Award, and that there is a nationwide competition by the DOT on designing this, the vehicle for the, these people with a disability. And Brandon actually received the first place, the winner of those DOT award, and that's actually called the Easy Rider vehicle, the innovation, the program. And also Brandon was invited to participate, the NAE Frontiers in Engineering. The program is very competitive, and also he was invited to participate the Africa and US, the NAE Frontiers in Engineering Science and medical, the program. And at Purdue, Brandon is faculty co-lead in our school called 21st Human Development. That's actually one of the 5 strategic area, and then Brandon has been the co-leading that effort. And exceptional engagement award from Purdue Center on Aging and Life actually course. So a lot of the accomplishment. So these are about the research. Brandon is such outstanding researcher, but you will see that in Egypt to tell that he is outstanding teacher and the mentor as well. I see a lot of the Brandon's actually the student actually here, and so he is our faculty advisor for IEGSO graduate student the organization. Also, he is a faculty advisor for the Institute for Healthcare Improvement. And so again, he has currently advising 6 PhD the students, and he is actually innovative in this course and ethics that college, the courses, but he taught the ethics for IE. So one of the first actually such actually the other effort. So with all this outstanding achievement that he received outstanding faculty mentor for IE graduate student award in 2020. So let's welcome Brandon Pitts.
Wow. Bios always sound better when somebody else is giving them. So thank you so much. I'm so glad and honored to have the chance to speak to every one of you today to, first of all, kind of close out this series on celebrating our associate professors. And I don't know if this was by design, but I noticed that each of the 3 presentations today have humans as the center of what we're talking about. And so I want to kind of leave here today having us think about what that's going to mean for each one of us as we go our separate directions. And I'll end with a quote that might be troubling for some of us, but for us, we look at it as an opportunity. I have titled this presentation, I'm not that creative. I borrowed a title from an 80s movie, Planes, trains and automobiles. Okay, but I've actually borrowed some inspiration from my friend Vivek in the back here. I scratched out trains because I haven't yet had the chance to work on those, maybe in the future. And instead, I actually added humans. And you'll see why in just a little bit. So I'm very interested in understanding how humans and technologies can be better integrated as we see all of the AI and automation and smart technologies that are really infiltrating just about every area of our lives. So let me start all the way back from sometime in the 80s. I don't want my students to know the exact year. But I was born and raised in South Louisiana. It is about as far south as one can travel, about maybe 60 to 70 miles away from the Gulf. It is the capital city in Louisiana. A lot of people think I'm from New Orleans. I'm not from New Orleans. It's about an hour from Baton Rouge. And we are the second largest city in the state. And so when I was growing up, if you saw me as a kid, the only two things that I would talk about was airplanes and airports. And I really couldn't understand why that was the case. I'm still very fascinated by airplanes and airports today. But this was my dream, was to either be a pilot or to be an executive at an airline. Neither of those panned out, but I think what I decided to do was a better alternative. And I was going to say, so if I think back that many years ago, I was already kind of interested in human machine collaboration. I just didn't know it at the time, and I didn't have the language to describe that. So I decided to enroll in Louisiana State University, which is in Baton Rouge. And something happened when I was in high school. Okay, even though I was very interested in aviation, I became very fascinated with chemistry. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to Louisiana State. There's a lot of oil and gas and oil and gas and chemical refineries that are down south. So I should just get a chemical engineering degree and let that be my future. Okay, and I actually started off in chemical engineering. I see some of my mentors are here that may not actually know that to be the case, but I started off in chemical engineering. And about my second year in the program, I realized that I was not necessarily going to be happy doing that. Okay, why was that? It was because airplanes and airports were still calling me. So you see this division that I have here. That's my old life. Gave chemical engineering a little bit of a taste, and then decided to try to figure out what discipline at LSU was going to bring me back to aviation. That ended up being industrial engineering, not mechanical engineering. I wasn't interested in the designing the airplane itself. I was more interested in the operations behind it. At the time, I met my most influential mentor to date. His name was Dr. Isaiah Warner, or is. He's living in Ohio now. And he had a program that was called LSTEM, which was a program designed to create pathways for undergrads to eventually obtain a PhD. And so all the way, back in undergrad, my second year in undergrad, he was talking to us about getting a PhD. And so eventually I just made that my life goal. I didn't think about anything else. Through his program, I got to work with Dr. Laura Akuma, who's also in Louisiana. She's doing a lot of physical ergonomics, but she was the one that really just introduced me to the idea of human factors. Through the LSTEM program, we were strongly encouraged to participate in summer REU programs. So having grown up in South Louisiana, I thought that was the best opportunity for me to leave the state and go up north. Although now I know that Iowa is not north. It's actually Midwest, but with respect to Louisiana, that's certainly north. And so this was a great experience for me. I had never spent time away from home to kind of engage in something that I thought I was interested in. So the idea is that I wanted to still pursue my passion in aviation. And so on the left side, I've got another divided line here, right? That means that it didn't pan out, but there's a good story for why that's the case. On the left side, you'll see that at the Iowa City Airport, there was a professor who I wanted to work with who was doing work around aviation human factors. But in 2008, the Iowa City River flooded and the airport was flooded as well. And because of that, I could not work with him. Instead, I moved over to a driving research lab, and I worked with, at the time I didn't know it, but he's world-renowned John Lee, who's now at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, but his name is synonymous with driving human factors. Didn't know it at the time, but he kind of set into motion everything that you're going to hear from from here on out. And so I had a great time working with him. This is the National Advanced Driving Simulator. At one point, they were the largest driving sim in the country. Toyota then 2 years after this decided to build one that was bigger, and so they no longer can brag about that. Okay, but these are pictures for me. Yes, I still do have the same haircut 15 years later. After that, since I didn't get a chance to work in aviation in Iowa, the following summer I applied to be an intern at, well, it was Continental Airlines at the time. Now it's United Airlines. In 2010, the two airlines merged, and they kept the Continental logo, and they changed their name to United. And I have to tell you, to date, this has probably been the best experience, aside from being a professor. This has probably been the best experience so far that I've had in my life, because this was the first time IE became alive for me. And this is a picture of me standing on side of a GE90 engine that's attached to a Boeing 777 airplane. So you can see I'm not very tall, but trust me, I don't stand a chance against this thing, okay? Especially when it starts up. But it was so real for me because we were on the tarmac in Houston and Newark airports all day long, just understanding the pushback process. We call it the pushback. It's the only thing that we care about when you're a traveler, right? How long does it take you to load people into the plane and then back the plane away from the jet bridge? And so this was before iPads, before smartphones. We actually were using clipboards, pen and paper to understand the processes that were involved in pushing back an airplane. And so for me, I can still smell jet fuel. I'm not kidding. I can still smell jet fuel. If I think about it, I can still actually feel the vibrations of the planes kind of rumbling the airport as they're taking off. And this was, again, 15, 14 years ago. Okay. So after I graduated from LSU, I decided that I was still very interested in learning. I didn't feel like I was ready to go work just yet. And so I decided to apply to many top IE programs. And wouldn't you know it, I was able to find a lab that allowed me to do work that fulfilled both passions in aviation, that's on the left side, and in driving. So aviation was what I've been talking about since I've started. Driving was what I picked up in the University of Iowa. And I worked with NAE member Nadine Sarter, who is also world-renowned for aviation human factors. And she helped me to understand the psychology of drivers and pilots. And I've got a lot of knowledge from her about what are those displays that we see when you walk into an airplane, you look to the left, and it looks like it's a mess. But to the pilots, it's not, right? It's very well organized for them for the most part. And so she helped us understand all of that. And so this was a fantastic experience for me. When I left Michigan, 2016, we were just starting to see automation, and not yet AI, but automation kind of become pervasive. I can remember Walmart at the time started to install these self-checkout counters. Gas stations started moving to start enabling people to swipe their cards instead of having to go into the gas station to pay. Okay, those things were kind of coming on board, and I could see that trend. And so when I interviewed at Purdue, okay, I was an assistant professor for 6 years, and then just last year was promoted. When I came to Purdue, I actually told, as a part of my job talk, Purdue, that I wanted to kind of leverage what was happening in society with all of this AI and automation. And so I'm not going to read each one of these, but there are a number of positives that have come out of this kind of digital revolution. But there are also some threats that we need to be mindful about, that if we don't get under control, okay, this will be on the last page, we may actually succumb to what Bill Gates just mentioned last week. Okay. And so this is no surprise. We're going to see these technologies continue to permeate and penetrate just about every part of human life. So at Purdue, I founded the Enhance Lab. Yes, it's a mouthful. Yes, I came here one day. I sat in a coffee shop and I just started listing out some words. I thought about improve, I thought about advance, and then enhance came to my mind. I took the E off and I forced the letters to say exactly what it is I wanted it to say. But I think it actually signals the right message. We are trying to enhance what I would call human in the loop performance for diverse operators that are working with varieties of technologies in a variety of different contexts. That basically sounds like everything, right? But if you look, you can kind of see the pervasion of technology in all of these environments. And my lab has, I was going to say, has actually led a lot of the initiatives in terms of helping us understand what does this look like. I want to highlight for you just some of the projects that we've been fortunate to work on. This is, I would say, one of the most influential projects that I've had a chance to work on. This is with my colleague Denny Yu, who's in the back, as well as Juan Walks and Brad Durstock, and the Ford Motor Company. So this was a few years ago where Ford and other manufacturers or OEMs that were thinking about creating autonomous vehicles or semi-autonomous vehicles understood that there was this potential problem with driver inattention when using those semi-autonomous vehicles. What does that mean? You've seen the videos of Teslas when people are kind of falling asleep, even though they've been told not to, or that the vehicles can't handle every situation possible. And so we worked with Ford Motor Company to actually figure out a way to estimate a person's situation awareness or what they know about the driving environment, hey, using passive sensors. Here we use brain activity or sensors that can monitor brain activity and sensors that can monitor eye movements as a surrogate or kind of a replacement for the traditional ways of learning about a person's situation awareness, which is through paper-based surveys. Okay, but so far very impactful, and I would argue probably the most cited paper or body of work that has come out of this lab. Okay. Second project I want to highlight is one that was funded by the National Science Foundation. And the idea is that once we understand that people have poor situation awareness, what are some techniques that we can use to help them fill that gap? And so as a part of some work that I did as a grad student, we thought about introducing something called a vibrotactile information display. Okay. As you can see, this is representing the driver's seat. And what we did was actually install some vibration apparatuses, embedded them in the seat pan and the seat back of a vehicle. And we can actually create different types of patterns that will communicate to the driver what he or she should do or what he or she should be aware of in the environment. So for example, if you're somebody who has disengaged from, if you've disengaged from the driving task and you don't know that that there's a car that's coming pretty quickly in the left adjacent lane, and you don't have time to actually look to glean that information, then we have the tactile display that can actually inform you of that instead of you having to move your head and eyes to pick up that information. So this is something that was kind of next level, and we've gotten a lot of attention from this as well. What Professor Song mentioned was this idea that I've been fortunate enough to work on development as well. The first two projects I told you about were more basic research. This is a development project where the pictures that you're seeing are from 2022, where myself and a good colleague of mine, Brad Durstock, as well, worked with a variety of different industry partners to build this universally designed autonomous vehicle prototype. And so what you're seeing here is a variety of pictures that show different components of that. So if you're someone in a wheelchair, there's a smart ramp that helps you get in and out of the vehicle. Okay, if you're also in a wheelchair, a lot of people don't know this, you need to secure yourself in the vehicle once you're in there. So if the vehicle is moving around and your wheelchair is also moving around, that doesn't sound great. Okay, so we have this universal securement system, and we have this, we call it an awareness system, but it's really a multimodal display that enables travelers to interact with the vehicle using any type of sensory inputs that is suitable for their condition. So if you're someone who has a speech impediment or speech problems, then you can use alternative methods to interact with the vehicle. This is where you control your entertainment, navigation, lighting, all of those types of things. In case you're wondering, for the last few minutes, I've been talking only about driving. What happened to aviation? Well, I've also had the chance to still be a part of aviation-related projects. Most of this has been funded through the Federal Aviation Administration. This is one project where we simply looked at how do you start thinking about bringing intelligent technologies into the general aviation cockpit. And most of us are familiar with commercial aviation, which is Delta Airlines, American, United. But general aviation is a lot more varied, and those are mostly the For example, the planes that you would see out at the Purdue airport. If you're someone who has enough money to own your personal plane, that's the type of aviation we're talking about here. And so you can imagine that there is a lot of variability in what each one of those cockpits look like, right? Compared to in commercial aviation when there's a whole lot more consistency. Okay. And so we had the chance to work on that. Last summer, I was also fortunate enough to travel to Seattle, Washington to be a part of the Boeing Visiting Professor Program with 4 other colleagues here at Purdue. And so I'm just kind of trying to show you how everything has come full circle for me. All right, the last few slides. So Professor Sum mentioned that I'm also very interested in the aging population. The reason for that is that in 2016, a lot happened in 2016. I graduated, technologies were becoming more pervasive, and we reached an inflection point in the world, not just the US, in the world where there are now more people who are over the age of 65 than there are kids who are between the ages of 0 and 4. And so that has a lot of societal implications, right? People are worried about something called a top-heavy society where we have the largest population is older and those that are younger make up less and less percentage of the population. We've got to think about what that actually means and what it means when it comes to technology. Okay, so 2 of the things that we're trying to do in our lab is make sure that older adults don't outpace the rate of technological developments, and technological developments don't outpace the rate of older adults. If we can keep up with that, then I would define that as success. I was also asked to comment on outreach. Well, my students and I, even just last night, and since 2019, we have participated and in fact led this community service event that's hosted by CALC, that's the Center on Aging and the Life course. This is where once a month we actually go to independent and assisted living facilities throughout Lafayette and Greater Lafayette, and we help older adults who have a variety of challenges with any type of technology. We help them solve those problems. And so many of my students here, they can tell you what our success rate is. It's not 100%, maybe 90, 92%, okay? Most of the time we can walk away with them having smiles on their faces. Sometimes we have to re-engage in a second session to help close the loop on something that we started the first time. In terms of teaching and mentoring, I've also been very fortunate to teach a variety of classes that are focused in human factors. And so I really want to make sure that students, not just IE students, but students that are getting engineering degrees in general, have some awareness of human factors engineering, human psychology, because in most cases they're designing technologies for who? For humans, right? And so they need to know something about what that means. I've had 4 PhD students that have graduated so far. Most of them are affiliated with some universities. 2 of them are assistant professors. 1 of them is a research associate at the Virginia Tech Transportation Institute. And then 1 of them is working at Boeing. And so we've got 2 more that will be graduating soon, and we'll see where they end up going. And as Fung mentioned, I'm also the faculty advisor for a few student groups. This is where the drum roll comes. Okay, some of you might have already heard about this, but I thought that this was ironic that just last week, just the week before I was asked to give this talk, there's this quote that was captured from Bill Gates himself. And he basically says, and I'm going to read this word for word so that I don't do it a disservice, but it says, over the next decade, advances in artificial intelligence will mean that humans will no longer be needed for most things in the world. How many of you have heard of that? Okay. Because we're running out of time, I won't ask you to respond, but I have to be honest with you. Even as someone who studies humans and how humans interact with technology, this concerned me. I have to be honest. And even now, I hope that he's wrong. And if so, no, let me say this. If he's not wrong, then I think we're in trouble. If he is wrong, then we can go on as we are. But either way, I think every one of us, now that we've seen this, has to figure out what it means to us. And are we going to be on the side that actually tries to fight this and make sure that it's human and machine interacting? Or are we going to be on the side of those who say, well, this is going to be the trend for the future and we'll just let it go? You have to determine that. What I can tell you is that the Enhanced Lab is in the first case, right? We're trying to figure out how to make sure that we are intelligently integrating humans and technology. Last few slides, I have to thank my students. Several of them are here, Maya, James, Myungu, and Chiwe. So we try to have some kind of end of the semester social each semester. And so this is just some snapshots from a variety of what those things look like. But I have to tell you, this lab cannot stand on even one leg if I didn't have any of these students with me. And so I hope they know that. But in the case that they don't, I'm telling them this now. Okay. And then finally, there are a ton of people that I would like to thank. I don't have the time to list them all out. Several of you are here in the room. You know who you are. There's 3 here. There's 4 or 5 there. There's 1 in the back. There's 2 here. There's 1 here. There's 1 here. There's 2 here. And there's 1 in green right here. And 1 in burgundy right there. So thank you so much. Yep, this has been great. I've had a lot of mentors, collaborators, friends. I am gracious for the support that we've gotten from our both government agencies as well as industry partners, and to my family who allowed me to travel away from Louisiana and stay in the Midwest for 14 years. So thank you so much. I'm happy to take any questions now.
Thank you. Questions for Brendan?
Yes.
All right. Did Bill Gates' not needed people include professors?
I will not comment on that.
Other questions for Brendan? Yes.
Yeah, I think I don't agree with Bill Gates. I think in that time, we will create more things.
Yeah.
Like we can create more things. I think using artificial intelligence, but we can create more things. So that means more people can have. You just imagine like we have computer. 100 years ago, we don't have computer. You have to type everything, but now we have computer. We can basically make more things, right? It does not say computer replace human being.
Yeah.
I think so. Another thing I want to ask you, I think this is not scary. And now the federal funding, everything seems different. So as a social professor, do you think, you get affected by the administration?
Well, so here's the thing. The good thing is we've had a pretty diverse funding portfolio, and I've been fortunate to kind of transition to more development, right? I would say half of what my lab is doing is basic research. The other half is development. What I'm hoping to do is leverage the partnerships and relationships I have with industries to try to figure out how to take some of the things that we have been exploring in the lab and translate that to something that's practical. So that's kind of how I'm going to respond to that, is that you can see the industry partners we've had a chance to work with. We're going to continue to build that. I'm always traveling to conferences to actually meet more and connect with more. And so that's going to be my response.
Excellent. Any other questions? Yes.
Thank you, Brandon. That was an awesome talk. You talked about the Asian population. In your future work. Do you see yourself creating like some type of assistive technology or more things to help the Asian population? And if it was like, if you had unlimited money, what would you create?
Ooh. I could spend probably 2 hours answering that, but here's what how I can respond to that. One of the neat things about working with older adults and older populations is that they are very diverse. I don't mean in terms of racial diversity. I mean in terms of ability, both physical and cognitive and social. And so even though they're starting to make up more and more of the population, we have to actually look at that group as not being homogeneous, but kind of looking at individual differences and say, well, if you are someone who has cognitive impairments, then this is the kind of support you need. If you're someone who has physical impairments, this is the kind of support you need. And believe it or not, if you're someone that has no impairments at all, because we do know of people who are 75, 80 years old who don't, they have no problems. In fact, they're still running marathons with 8 and 9 minutes per mile times. And so I think that's how I'll respond to that, is that kind of trying to figure out how do we segment older populations into a variety of different groups and think about for each one of those groups what the particular needs are. That would take me a lifetime to solve. Okay.
Hey, well, thank you. So one thing that which wasn't mentioned is actually I was told from our, faculty and staff, I joined recently, but we worked very hard to recruit the Brandon for the graduate school. And then he went to Michigan, but I'm so happy that we were able to recruit him to our school as a faculty member. So let's give a big round of applause to Brandon. Looking forward to continue to your continued success.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.